Welcome back to the OPSEC podcast. I'm your host, Alan Pace, and this week we are covering the COVERT Protocol action number 3, which is implementing multi-factor authentication everywhere possible. Now, I am a big believer in multi-factor authentication. I believe it is one of the single most effective tools that you can use in order to prevent unauthorized access to any one of your accounts. Our recommendation is to implement multi-factor authentication on every account that allows it, using the strongest method available with a graduated approach of 3 different types of multi-factor authentication. The first and most basic type is SMS codes, multi-factor authentication via text message, essentially. This is not a recommended form of two-factor authentication. However, if it's the only thing the service offers, I believe it's still better than nothing. A better method is the use of authenticator apps. These apps are apps that you install on your mobile device, and it generates a one-time code, and you enter that in addition to your password. The way this works is you install the authenticator app onto your phone or your tablet or whatever device, and when you activate multi-factor authentication on a specific account, it will provide you a QR code. You scan that QR code with your authenticator app, and then it links and generates those codes. Then every time you want to log on to that account, you just pull up the app, you enter in username and password, as well as the one-time code for that account, and boom, you're good to go. The third and most secure version of two-factor authentication is the hardware key. I use these very regularly. The ones that I recommend to friends, family, and clients is the YubiKey. I prefer the YubiKey with a USB-C port, which is the same port that most phones use for their power plug, and I can use it on my phone, I can use it on my tablet, I can use it on my laptop or my desktop PC. And the way that these work is very similar to an authenticator app. When you enter in your username and password, it's going to ask you for a code. You plug in your YubiKey and you press the button, and it spits out a really long one-time key code that's affiliated with that hardware key. The steps for implementing multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication includes step 1, which is to audit all of your important accounts. And I would start with the most important accounts, as always, would be financial accounts, and I would move down the ladder of importance from that point and implement the multi-factor authentication method that you choose into every single account that will allow it. Step 2, for all of those accounts that will support multi-factor authentication, you want to log into that account, you want to go to the security settings, and you want to enable the multi-factor authentication. You want to choose the strongest method that they offer. If they offer a hardware key and you want to have a hardware key as well as an authenticator app, which is what I use both of those methods depending on what the service provides. Now, if you want to make it simple, pick a good authenticator app, use it for everything. Step 3 is, if you are using an authenticator app or a hardware key, save the backups recovery codes securely. Therefore, if you lose the device or access to the authenticator app, you have the backup codes that you can restore it with. Very important. Step 4, if you find that when you audit some accounts that they only offer SMS or email two-factor authentication, submit a request for them to upgrade to an authenticator app, and perhaps they will consider upgrading the security in the future. And step 5 is to test the MFA method for a successful login by logging off of everything, logging back on, using the two-factor or multi-factor authentication method that you chose and set up to ensure that it works. Now, choosing an MFA tool can be a little bit tricky, but it doesn't have to be. There's a lot of different ones out there. I recommend Authy because it's easy and it is able to be synced across multiple devices. I use it for my spouse and other family members when I want to have MFA sharing across different accounts that I want them to have access to. Also, Proton Authenticator is a good option. It's with the Proton suite, which we use and appreciate their tools, so I have used that for other accounts as well. But the gold standard for me is the YubiKey. I use the YubiKey on every single thing that I possibly can. Now, you might notice that I just gave you 3 recommended tools and I said that I use all 3 of them, and that is the case. That is a compartmentalization technique that I use that I've talked about previously. So if you have the ability to use multiples, then I would employ that. But for ease of use, pick one and stick with it, and it'll make family members less upset that you are applying these security measures because they will adapt them easier. And that will wrap up this week's episode for the OPSEC podcast covering the COVERT Protocol action number 3 of implementing multi-factor authentication. As always, if you are looking for the recommended tools or guides or resources that we mention on these episodes, go to our website, opsecpodcast.com, and click on the resources page. You will find everything listed there. And I look forward to seeing y'all back here for the next episode. Until then, remember that your privacy and your security is your responsibility. I'm your host, Alan Pace, signing off.